Hi, I'm MacKenzie Fegan, and this is 112BK coming to you from downtown Brooklyn. On the show today, some saber-rattling with Iran. We'll talk about it with the crew, which is 1/4 Iranian and 4/4 fed up with this bullshit.
This isn't going to result in Iranians mistrusting their own government, which I think is what this administration wants.
Definitely.
It's just going to result in Iranians mistrusting America even further.
And then we'll talk about Filipino President Rodrigo Duterte, drug enforcement, and your money.
A large part of this aid goes to funding the Philippine National Police, who are those who are carrying out the anti-drug campaign of the Duterte regime.
We are back today with the crew. I'm MacKenzie Fegan, host of 112BK, and joining me we have
Myra Al-rahim, I'm the podcast editor for the show.
I'm Isabel Alcantara. I'm the associate producer.
And I'm Shirin Barghi, and I'm one of the producers of the show.
Thank you for joining me again, you guys.
Thanks for having
So
me.
today we're going to talk about Iran. It's upsetting, it's depressing, and I especially want to talk about it because of you, Shirin. So you were from Iran.
Yes.
And I'm curious about how the recent saber-rattling and escalation is going for you and for your family.
Well, it's not really going well. It's been like 2 weeks since Trump started this escalation of war with Iran. And now that it kind of seems that the dust has settled, a lot of people are heaving this sigh of relief and they're like, oh, Trump doesn't want a real war with Iran. It was just rhetoric. But I feel like they forget that sanctions is war, and the sanctions are hurting people, and it's hurting them where it really hurts. The Iranian economy is falling apart. There's some serious shortages in the food industry, and in terms of medicine, some of the medicine are essential medicines. So there really are, like, if that isn't a kind of war, like if economic starvation isn't a form of war, then I don't know what is. And I feel like a lot of people don't see that.
So a brief recap is that we had détente for a while, and then Trump came in and was like, actually, I'm not going to be honoring the terms of this deal that Obama reached. This was a terrible deal for the U.S. And so he started imposing sanctions. And I feel like I personally have no idea what it's like to live under sanctions, like what that actually.
Well, your income is slashed. The Iranian rial has lost about 60% of its value. So that means that a lot of the savings have completely, like a lot of people lost a lot of their savings. So like right now, there's like this sense of hopelessness in Iran, and this sense of like numbness, I guess, and that's what is like that for me. That's super alarming.
Do you think a lot of the sentiment that arises from that, because when you live in Iran and you see that the U.S. government is effectively just like stepping on the neck of your economy, and like as a regular person, do you see like the United States sort of like unchecked international power in any sort of different way? Because I know, like in Mexico, that's like the invisible hand is hilarious because it's not invisible.
It's not invisible. It's attached to America.
It's attached to America. Yeah. Is that the same sentiment?
Absolutely. I feel like the Trump administration's main goal is to basically, I don't know, like get Iranians so pissed off with their government so they would go and change it. But that's like a really naive and wrong assumption, because sanctions never work, You can't be fighting for reform on a hungry stomach,
Right. And even if you are, like, that's like desperation, right?
Yeah.
And then again, I think that leads to these like strong men, autocrats, despots that we end up seeing all over the world, right? Because a country reaches a point of desperation, it breaks and says, we're going to ally with a person that says, I can get this thing done.
Right. I'm willing to give up
Absolutely.
some like personal freedoms in order to have food on my table.
Correct.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm curious, Myra, the recent escalation was because the government had received quote unquote credible threats about missiles or about some sort of like escalation in Iran's military machine. Is that right?
there were some attacks on ships in the Persian Gulf region, and they said they had credible proof that it was actually Iranians who launched those attacks.
I see.
But no one can corroborate.
No,
Right.
yeah, there's
Is this,
credible.
Myra, is this bringing back any memories of anything within our lifetime?
2003?
Yeah. Talk to us about this idea of credible threats.
Well, I think the refrain that I keep on coming back to as I see this news breaking and reading all the coverage is history sighs and repeats itself. And I can't help but try to draw comparisons between the situation right now and what was going on in 2003, on the eve of America's invasion of Iraq.
Yeah, remind us about that and where were you at that time?
So, God, I must have. How old would I have been? I would have been like 9 years old, living in London.
You're a baby.
I was a baby. I was a baby, but I was cognizant of what was going on. I mean,
Absolutely.
I
A
have
sentient baby.
a sentient
very-
baby.
yeah,
I
very
am-
smart
I have
baby.
a politically,
Politically
fluid
engaged.
family. Yeah, very
engaged.
politically
And you were
engaged
living
family.
in London, but you guys are originally, you're Iraqi? or?
My father's Iraqi, my mother's Lebanese, and there was a lot of feelings about the war. I actually, the majority of my Iraqi family at the time of the invasion was actually quite supportive of the Americans going. But that's another question altogether. I think that what I find particularly disconcerting is while the threat of Saddam in 2003 was so overstated. And a lot of American intelligence was proven categorically false. I mean, people knew at the time. The issue at hand is that Iran actually has an army that will bite back, whereas Saddam in 2003 did not. I mean, Saddam was a strong man, but he didn't have the military capabilities that Iran in 2019 has.
So I feel like I have on one hand, I'm hearing there's credible threats, and yes, they are going to restart their nuclear program. And on the other hand, I'm hearing this is all trumped up, and actually Iran just wants to be able to feed itself.
It has a military, but it didn't. I don't think Iran wants to go to war either. Like in the past 100 years, the Iranians have only gone to war once, and that was against Saddam Hussein when it invaded a part of Iran. So it was to defend itself. Right. Iran has been fighting its wars largely through proxy, allies in the region, which is why when news came of these ships in the Persian Gulf being attacked by Iran, it just doesn't make any sense because that's not their MO.
I think also the Iranians have remained so patient over the last 3 years. I agree. Right? They've really. I think they've really sought to wait out this storm, or at least up until recently, I think that was the tactic going forward, was that, they would just wait until the turnover of power. And I think push is really quickly coming to shove. And the people who will pay the price are not people who have a lot of money living in the region. They're not the policymakers. They're like the middle class. They're the lower classes. They're already disenfranchised. They're the women and children. And just to think that it's all coming to this is really, unthinkable.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I just keep on coming back to those people who you mentioned, the people who are on the ground, the people who can't emigrate, the people who don't want to emigrate.
Absolutely.
And about how it does seem like, how many years since sanctions were reimposed? 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah,
like
2 years.
3 years of turning the other cheek and being like, Trump is going to be a passing phase. We still have the support of Europe. We want to stick to our terms of the agreement, even if the United States has decided to go rogue and not honor their word. And just thinking about how much can people take?
Do you watch Veep? Does anyone watch Veep? Okay, there's a really funny line, and it's I say funny now, but actually when I think about it, it's sort of creepy.
It's a dark and funny show.
It's a dark and funny show. Selena Myers, who is the Veep in this context, talking about how she wants a war this time around if she wins the presidency. As if it's like some sort of cachet for a president
it feels
to have
really
a war.
real.
It is.
Right?
I don't think it is an accident that this
banks an
saber-rattling
election.
is happening, exactly, before an election. What you want is for the American populace to feel like there is a foreign threat. It's Iran. They're going to develop nuclear weapons.
And we need to keep the administration stable. Otherwise, who knows what'll happen?
That's right.
But I can't really pinpoint a clear sentiment on behalf of the American public that do people even want this? I can't even tell.
I don't think people want a war, but if you get them scared enough.
But what 2003 have, which 2019 doesn't, is 2001, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you needed 9/11 to happen,
right.
And
That's what
I know this
right.
could potentially sound
That's so true.
contentious, but
Yeah.
you needed 9/11 to
Yeah,
happen in
you
order
need-
for 2003 to be legitimized. Not that it was ever legitimate. I mean,
I was born right in the middle of the Iran-Iraq war, and I remember growing up at a time where you'd see all these faces, all the names of the streets were named after people who had been killed in the war, and
sacrificed
their lives. And I
Yeah,
feel like
whole
America,
thing.
and it's interesting because they both have that, and they're both trying to use that to basically shape hearts and minds for their own agenda. And I feel like the Iranians have been trying to kind of like meet halfway, especially when they signed the nuclear deal. I feel like everyone was so hopeful for a change. And now a lot of people are just like, this is why the Iranians can never trust America, the American government. Like time and time again, the U.S. has interfered in Iran's politics.
This is going to ultimately backfire on the Americans insofar as that you're just saying it like this isn't going to result in Iranians mistrusting their own government, which I think is what this administration wants. Definitely. It's just going to result in Iranians mistrusting America even further. Why would you want to permit that? I don't understand.
Well, Donald Trump is a great statesman, so I'm sure that he knows really got. That's right. Shirin, I have sort of like an interpersonal question. So I feel like I didn't know how to talk to people who, say, had experienced a death of someone close to them until my dad died. Yeah. Or, like when somebody has cancer, I feel like I'm all thumbs. Like I don't know the right thing to say. And I feel like in this situation, somebody whose country is under sanctions and somebody who, American rhetoric is like escalating to talk about war. Same with my friends from Venezuela. I just am not sure like what to say or how to express sympathy and solidarity with people. Do you have any advice for people who maybe have friends from Iran in their lives about like how we can support and help at this moment?
I think like the most important thing is to, I know this sounds really cliche, but vote, call your representatives. And also like in terms of like speaking to someone, just know that, as an Iranian now, I feel so helpless. And one of the reasons why it feels so hard for me to talk about this is because I literally feel so helpless.
If you're a white American listening to this, don't apologize to Shirin for what your country's doing, because that's some weird shit too. I feel like there have been times in my life where I've told people like I'm Iraqi, I've told Americans, and they're like, I'm so sorry for what this country did to you. And I'm like, shit, it wasn't your fault. Damn.
Okay, that's good to hear, because honestly, I do, like, as an American citizen, I do feel a huge amount of guilt towards all of the people who we have colonized and invaded and done terrible things to. I know that's not me. Yeah. But like I do feel like, I'm American. My country did that.
I think guilt is fine to an extent, but to then have it manifest into like I'm really sorry.
An apology is interesting, strange. Right? Because then you're putting like the burden of either understanding or forgiveness on the person that you're like allegedly apologizing for. And then you're like, I don't know what to do with this apology. Like I hope you feel better, but it is what it is.
So maybe it's like with your guilt, you should send some cat gifs and emojis, but then also go vote cat and pictures. Take political action and organize.
No weird I'm sorries. No more weird I'm sorry.
All right. Well, I think that's a good takeaway. I am not apologizing to any of you, but I am thankful that you guys are joining me again today.
Thank you for having us.